Thank you very much, my brother, Justice Mahlanga Bungani Makhulukhulu waze wangisho kahle. Ndiyabulela. Thank you for that very good introduction. Thank you, Program Director. The Justice Mahlanga, the justices of the various high courts present here, Vice Chancellor, or Chancellor first, Vice Chancellor, family members of the late OR TAMBO present here, Deputy Vice Chancellor, members of the Senate present, Chairperson of the Council, Deans of the various faculties, academic staff, President of the SRC, and other members of the SRC present, all the students of the university present here, the administrative staff, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is for me a singular honor to have been invited by this university to deliver the 2023 OR TAMBO Public Lecture. And I take this opportunity to express my gratitude and appreciation to the Vice Chancellor and his team for deeming it fit to invite me to deliver this lecture today. It is a singular honor that I've been invited to deliver this lecture because it is a lecture to honor one of the most outstanding sons, not just of our country, but of this continent. One of the most outstanding freedom fighters, one of the most outstanding leaders that this country has produced. Therefore, it is important that one acknowledges this special privilege to have been invited to deliver a lecture in memory of somebody so outstanding. It is my first time to set foot at this historic institution, which has produced great leaders in different spheres of life, including politics. Those great leaders include those who went on to become prime ministers and presidents of countries, such as President Nelson Mandela, and others on the continent, particularly in SADC countries. This historic institution has also produced leaders of organizations such as the late OR Tambo, who led the African National Congress in exile for about 30 years. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, former president of the Inkatha Freedom Party, and many others alive or who have passed on. Our continent owes this historic institution a huge debt for the work that this institution has done, not just for South Africa, but for a number of countries for whom it produced leaders. It was my mother's wish that when I finished my matric, I should come and study at this university. She had this wish because she had come across some professionals who had studied in this institution and who represented this institution very beautifully. And she thought at least one of her children, if she or he went to university, should come to this university. I too wished to come to this university, but ultimately I had to go to the University of Zululand because this university was too far from my home, and the traveling costs alone would have been prohibitive. At least the University of Zululand was not so far. For my address today, I've chosen the title, Oliver Tambo, His Values and Contribution to Justice, Democracy, and the Rule of Law. In dealing with this topic, I wish to begin by pointing out that quite obviously, this address is about Oliver Tambo's values and his contribution in the struggle against apartheid and for the attainment of freedom for the majority of this country. That struggle was one struggle. There was no separate struggle for justice, a separate struggle for democracy, and a separate struggle for the rule of law. The majority of the people of this country were oppressed by a white, racist minority, and there was no justice, no democracy, and no rule of law. The struggle for justice and democracy included the rule of law. Indeed, Oliver Tambo's entire adult life was devoted to the elimination of apartheid and the attainment of justice, democracy, and the rule of law. In dealing with Oliver Tambo's values and his contribution to justice, democracy, and the rule of law, I will not attempt to cover his whole life because it cannot be covered in a lecture of about an hour. I propose to refer to various parts of his life and highlight or deal with his values and certain features of his contribution to democracy, justice, and the rule of law. Excuse me. Oliver Tambo was born on 27 October 1917 in Kantolo at Bizana, in what is now known as the Eastern Cape. As a boy, he experienced the rural life that all African boys experienced at the time in rural areas. He herded cattle like all boys and got involved in various activities that parents and their children in rural areas experienced, which would include working in the fields, plowing and harvesting the fields during harvesting time. Of course, children would be assisting their parents in such activities. When he went to school on his first day and was asked what his name was, he said it was Kaiser. And the teacher told him that that was his home name. And the teacher needed, and he needed to have a school name. Igama lesikole. Sikhula ke thina bekuba khona lesikole bekuba khona nelecawe. The teacher asked him to go back home and ask his parents to give him a school name and a second name, which the teacher said should be one of his ancestors' names. When Kaiser got home and told his parents what the teacher had said, his father said that his full name was Oliver, and his second name was Tambo. When one hears this part of Oliver Tambo's story, one remembers that in the case of Nelson Mandela, his teacher also asked him his name, and when Mandela told him he was Rolihlahla, his teacher wanted an English name. But Nelson Mandela was not lucky to be asked to go home and ask his parents to give him a school name. The teacher decided to give him a school name and said his school name would be Nelson, which is the name by which he ultimately became known globally. Oliver Tambo was exposed to apartheid even before he came to this university. He was exposed to the reality of racial segregation when he was a learner at St. Peter's in Johannesburg. The author of Oliver Tambo, Beyond the Ngeli Mountains, Kalinikos, talking about the environment in the neighborhood of St. Peter's, says that As you left the school, you would notice the gate of a house which would be written, "Dogs and natives not allowed." She says you would walk and see a baby, barely 2 years old, sitting at a pavement with an African woman. The baby looks up to you as you walk past, and with the full tenderness of her little voice, shouts, "You Kefa?" A phrase which must comprise the first few words she would have learnt from her mother. That is enough to show you that apartheid was right in your face wherever you went. It is not necessary to give other examples to show that apartheid was strong and was enforced vigorously at the time. That is well known. When Oliver Tambo did his JC, which was called Junior Certificate, I think now it would be grade 10, he passed an examination that was written both by black and white students with first class, together with one other African learner, student, and they made history because no African learner or student had achieved such a pass before. Indeed, Oliver Tambo passed at school with flying colors. When he came to this university, he wanted to study medicine, but he discovered that the university did not offer medicine, but in which he was not interested. He then decided to enroll for a BSc degree with maths and science as his majors. He chose to take maths and science as his majors despite warnings from other students that these were very difficult subjects. He had also ascertained that many African students normally did not take BSc with maths and science as majors, and he wanted to take BSc with maths and science as majors in order to make a contribution to closing the gap in terms of which there were few or no African students who took that degree with those measures. If one looks at his reasons for taking BSc with maths and science as majors, it seems to me that it wasn't just for him only, but he must have wanted to pave the way for others so that they could see that it was possible and that it could be done, particularly because there were so many African students who were told, and certainly not maths and sciences measures, on the basis that they were very difficult. When Oliver Tambo was at this university and he stayed at Builder Hall, it did not take long before he made a name for himself in debates. Already at that time, when he was a student here, he was seen as a clear thinker who always saw both sides of a problem. Excuse me. There are two incidents which happened while he was a student at this institution that appear to have made a significant contribution to his focus in politics. The one incident was an African lady who worked in the kitchen who was assaulted by a white boarding master, kicked and beaten because it was alleged that she had carelessly broken crockery. When Oliver Tambo and other students became aware of this, they took this matter up and took the position that whatever the African lady had done, the boarding master had no right to beat her, to kick her. They discussed, that is, the students, what to do about this matter. And ultimately decided that they would boycott lectures, but that they would do so in a peaceful and disciplined manner. And it is said that the peaceful part and the disciplined manner part was due to Oliver Tambo's influence. One of the options that had been considered would have had some elements or would have had the risk of violence. Already in the discussion around this incident, that Oliver Tambo was someone who was methodical in his analysis of issues was becoming noticeable. He was very strategic in his approach when dealing with a problem. That incident led to a boycott of lectures, but there was an incident later on which Oliver Tambo definitely led. He had made a proposal that a tennis court that had not been used for some time be rebuilt so that students over weekends could use it, and had obtained support from various stakeholders, including students, who then used their time to rebuild this tennis court. But when it had been built and it was ready, and the warden, Bishop Smythe, was told about it, and was told by Oliver Tambo, was very excited. He said nothing doing. He said the students who were Methodists and those who were Presbyterian, their churches did not allow them to play on a Sunday, and therefore there should be no games on Sunday. And he said the Anglicans might not have such a rule, but if the students who were Anglicans played, they would be a temptation to the Methodist students and Presbyterian, who would then be tempted to effectively break their church's rules and play on Sunday. This ultimately led to a boycott of lectures, or actually a decision to not cooperate with the authorities, with the result, for example, that when they went to Mass in the morning, they had decided that they would not sing hymns, they would not say anything. They didn't want to break rules, so they made sure that they did not break rules, but they did not cooperate. But all attempts, including attempts by Professor Matthews to assist to resolve this matter, did not succeed, because Bishop Smythe and the authorities were clear that this was not going to happen, and ultimately they gave an ultimatum to the students to either abide by the decision by Bishop Smythe, failing which they would be expelled. Many of you would have heard that Oliver Tambo was a devout Christian, and that he was a very prayerful man. It is said that on the day when he was given an ultimatum to choose between abiding by Bishop Smythe's decision or continuing with the position taken by the students, he asked for an opportunity to go and pray about this. And after he had prayed at the chapel, he said it was not going to be in accordance with his religion, and of course was subsequently expelled. By that time he had received his BSc degree and was working towards a teaching diploma, postgraduate teaching diploma. Later on, he was to get a job at St. Peter's, where he had been a learner previously, and ultimately spent many years in Johannesburg, where he met again with Nelson Mandela, with whom he had been at this university. And he met Walter Sisulu as well, and ultimately joined the ANC. Oliver Tambo was not somebody who would push others so that he would be in front. He did not like limelight. He was happy to allow others to take the limelight. He was more interested in strategizing for whatever he and others were involved in, and planning. He had a high intellect, but this was noticed when he was in the ANC by many. And they sought to ensure that he took leadership positions. I'm not going to go into various activities that he got involved in the struggle. But I think what is very important at this stage is to look at the values that this man had. What were the values that drove him to do as much as he did, some of which I will deal with just now, in order to ensure that apartheid is eliminated and freedom for the majority of people in this country was attained. One of his